Here are 7 players you want to avoid in your fantasy football drafts, or else you're probably going to lose your league. We'll start with number 1, James Conner, currently going as running back 13 off the board in round 3. Conner had a great year last year. Scored running back 5 total points. He played 15 games, scoring 18 total touchdowns. He's guaranteed to score less touchdowns this year. It's hard to score 18 in 1 year. Last year, Conner, despite scoring a lot of touchdowns, was very inefficient. This was a guy that finished 46th in yards per attempt, finished 52nd in yards after contact. He had a total of only 39 receptions, and 25 of them came in 4 games without Chase Edmonds. Look, only 14 receptions in the other 11 games. That's not going to cut it as an RB2 in most fantasy leagues. Now, while Edmonds is now a Miami Dolphin, they replaced him with Darren Williams. They still have Eno Benjamin, who they like as a receiving back. And Conner, he was relatively healthy last year. Like I said, playing in 15 games, but he's still 27 years old. We know he struggled with injuries in the past, especially with his time with the Steelers. And prior to last year, Conner had missed 3 or more games in the previous 3 straight seasons. In 2018, we saw Conner score a lot of touchdowns, 12 to be exact. In 2019, the following year, only 4 touchdowns in 10 games played. I don't see the Cardinals wanting to give him a full workload. It's just based on his injury history. Look elsewhere in the 3rd round. Let's move on to a tight end, Darren Waller, who I am avoiding him, currently going as tight end 5 off the board in round 6. Now, I know tight end is the limited position, not a lot of depth there. Still want to avoid this guy. Last year, Waller was injured, only played in 11 games, and he was tight end 7 on a points per game basis. Now, he already has a limited in preseason with a hamstring injury, and not to mention, they brought on Davante Adams. Ever heard of him? Still got Hunter Renfrow. Look, this is a team that's going to want to throw the ball, but they're going to want to throw the ball to those 2 guys. And Waller, while he was a fantasy beast in the past, that was large in part due to being the only option in this receiving game. Now they got 2 legitimate options in. This is a guy that doesn't have a lot of touchdown upside. We see the tight end position as one that usually you need a lot of touchdowns to finish at the top of that position. And this is a guy that really hasn't scored a lot. And if you look at it, the last 3 years, 3, 9, and 2 touchdowns. The 9 touchdowns appear to be more of an anomaly. This is not a guy they use at the goal line much. Only 6 red zone targets last year. And sure, they had a new head coach in Josh McDaniels, and maybe he'll find out a way to use Darren Waller in his 6'6" frame. I just don't see it. We see Davante Adams, a great red zone guy. We know Hunter Renfrow, great red zone guy. 2 guys that can beat man coverage pretty consistently. I'd rather go to a tight end like Dalton Schultz, 13 picks later, than a guy like Darren Waller going at the top of the board in round 6. I'll go move on. The next player, I'll be honest, you guys aren't going to like, but first, you got to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. We're donating 10 cents to St. Jude for every subscriber we gain in August. Go do it. It only takes a second. Let's move on to this guy, Jaylen Waddle. I know a lot of you guys aren't going to like this one, but why are we avoiding Jaylen Waddle? Currently wide receiver 14 off the board, round 4. Now, Waddle was successful last year in his first season. Wide receiver 13 in PPR leagues, wide receiver 21 in standard leagues. And that was large in part due to volume, 104 receptions. He did have 7 touchdowns on 17 red zone targets, so pretty solid. Waddle does a lot of his damage in the slot, lined up 68% of the time in the slot. Now, the Dolphins went out over this offseason and acquired a pretty good receiver. You might know him, Tyreek Hill. Now, Tyreek Hill lined up in the slot last year with the Chiefs over 50% of the time. One of the best slot receivers the NFL has to offer. He's going to steal some of that time in the slot. He's also going to steal a large target share away from Waddle, which Waddle was basically their only option last year. Also, I don't really trust Tua Tagovailoa as a quarterback, and I don't see him being able to sustain 2 fantasy relevant wide receivers. Tyreek Hill will be fantasy relevant. It's Tyreek Hill, but I don't see Jaylen Waddle being that good this year. He'll still be solid, but not all that good. Rather a guy like Michael Pittman Jr. has a chance for double-digit touchdowns this year in that Colts offense. Give me him instead of Jaylen Waddle. Let's talk about another receiver, DK Metcalf, currently going as wide receiver 17 off the board in round 6. Now, everyone loves DK. You see the highlights. He's a freakish athlete. This guy's insane. Last year, he finished as wide receiver 14, large in part thanks to 12 touchdowns. Can he get 12 touchdowns again in this offense? Not too confident in that. If he only had 8 touchdowns, which would still be a pretty good year last year, would have finished as wide receiver 23, a big drop off from the wide receiver 14 that he was. Now, last year, he finished the year not all too hot, scoring 12 or less fantasy points in 7 of his final 8 games. Large of them still with Russell Wilson at the helm. Well, now he obviously doesn't have Russell Wilson. He has Geno Smith or Drew Lock, and boy, oh boy, do I not want to watch him play with those guys. And they won't throw for as many yards as Russell Wilson. That's a guarantee. They also won't be as accurate as Russell Wilson. And we look at Wilson prior to his finger injury last year. He led the league in yards and passing rating. This guy was absolutely insane. And look, if we want to talk about it, Russell Wilson still played in 14 games. He didn't miss that many games. And in those games, DK still all year long didn't have a game with more than 6 or more receptions. I don't see him being able to have a big year this year. I just don't see it happening. This is going to be a guy that's very touchdown dependent and a very bad offense. I don't know how you're going to get a lot of touchdowns. I don't see him getting a lot of receptions, so I'm avoiding him. The wide receiver position is very deep. Go elsewhere. You don't want to be watching Drew Lock or Geno Smith on Sundays. I promise you that. Let's talk about one more running back that I will be avoiding, Breece Hall. currently going running back 20 off the board, round 6. Now, let's be honest, he's a New York Jet. Now, I have a trivia question. When was the last time the Jets had a fantasy relevant running back? Exactly. You probably can't think of one. There really hasn't been a lot. I can say that because I'm a Jets fan. Now, this offense is still going to struggle. Mekhi Becton now out for the year. They brought in Dwayne Brown, which is decent, but Zach Wilson now injured. I think he should be back this year. We'll see as his injury prognosis comes out. But still, Michael Carter still in the backfield. The guy that they spent a draft pick last year on. He was pretty solid for him. He's a good pass catching back. That's what he did large in part at UNC. And they're still going to have Tevin Coleman, the veteran. He's going to be annoying in there too. I just don't think there's a consistent enough workload for Breece Hall this year. I know a lot of people want that rookie running back wonder. I don't see it coming in this New York Jets offense. Like, I'd rather go to guys like Elijah Mitchell or Antonio Gibson with more touchdown upside than a guy like Breece Hall on what I would consider a pretty lackluster Jets offense this year. He has all the talent in the world, though. If Hall's going to win out and he's going to be pretty good in fantasy, it's going to be because of his talent. This guy has all the talent off the board. His production and efficiency were very awesome in college. I don't see it going away, and I really don't want to trust him as my RB2 in fantasy football. I'd go to different running backs if he can. Let's end the video talking about one receiver and one quarterback. Start with the receiver. Mike Williams, currently going as wide receiver 18 off the board in round 6. Now, Williams, if you watched our videos last year, he made me look pretty smart. He was my breakout candidate. I was all in on Mike Williams, and he finished as wide receiver 12. He was pretty good last year. However, most of that production came early in the season because through week 5, from week 1 to 5, he was wide receiver 2 in fantasy football behind a guy named Cooper Kupp. From week 6 on, wide receiver 28, finishing behind guys like Kendrick Bourne. And no one started Kendrick Bourne last year. He was in a contract year, so that's kind of why I liked him to break out, and he had a great year. But then he got paid this offseason. So where will his motivation be? Your guess is as good as mine. But you look at Mike Williams, this guy killed you in many weeks. He finished with 8 or fewer points in 7 games. You're still going to have Keenan Allen commanding a 25% or more target share. Williams will have some good weeks. He'll have some 1-2 touchdown weeks. He's also going to have a lot of bad weeks. And he's not a guy that you can just bench based on matchup. It's going to be a guy that you're going to have to trot out in your lineup. And you're going to have to live with the 7 or fewer point weeks. I really don't want to do that as a wide receiver 2 on my team. A guy that I never know what I'm getting from, even if it's a good or bad matchup. You never know what you're getting out of Mike Williams. So trying to avoid him at all costs. I love Mike Williams as a player. I think he's very talented. Got Justin Herbert, all the talent in the world. Just don't want to trust him too much. Also a guy that struggled with injuries in the past. I'm going to avoid Mike Williams if I can in that wide receiver 2 spot, kind of in that round 6. Finally, let's end with a quarterback. You guys might not like him. You might love him. His name's Aaron Rodgers, currently going as QB 8 off the board in round 8. Now, like I said, you either love or hate Aaron Rodgers for his antics, probably off the field more so than on. But let's talk about fantasy football. This is a guy that finished as QB 6 last year as he won his 2nd consecutive MVP trophy. Had a great year, over 4,100 yards, 37 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions. Unfortunately, like most top tier running or quarterbacks that you see in fantasy football, they normally have to do a lot on the ground. Aaron Rodgers is more or less the exception, him and Tom Brady, because he only had 101 rushing yards last year and no longer has his favorite weapon, Davante Adams. We know how good Adams is in the red zone, and basically it was a glitch. He would just throw it to Adams every time, and now there's a reason. He had 27 red zone targets, the 3rd most in the NFL, 11 touchdowns in 2021, 18 touchdowns in 2020. Now Rodgers is going to no longer have Adams. He's going to have to rely on Allen Lazard and Christian Watson to pick up the slack. I don't really want to count on that. The Packers also are a run-first offense. A lot of people think this is, got Aaron Rodgers throwing it a ton. They only averaged 34 pass attempts per game last year, and that was 18th in the NFL, below average. It's a team that really wants to run the ball with A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones. I prefer Stafford or maybe taking a chance on a guy like Trey Lance, who could easily finish above him this year. They just have a little bit more upside, Trey Lance, especially for running usage, but I'm going to avoid other guys. We'll have more videos on that. So those are my 7 players I am avoiding this year in fantasy football drafts. Let me know the players you are avoiding in the comments down below. We'll have some mock drafts coming up real soon, so definitely check out those. Make sure you subscribe, you like, and drop a comment with your favorite team. Hopefully we all have a great fantasy season, a lot of more fantasy content coming. There will be a video on the screen once some more videos are live. We appreciate you guys tuning in. I'm Austin. I'm signing out. Peace.